We are live.
All right, this is awesome. Okay, we just opened up the room, so I see a bunch of the attendees here joining in. That's nice. Thanks for coming early, guys. We're gonna wait here for everybody to come in for a little while. As usual, some of you guys have been to these webinars that Ali and I are hosting before, so you probably know the drill, but for those that are new, we have the chat functionality. Please feel free to ask questions there. We're going to have 10 minutes roughly at the end to answer some of the questions, and I bet there will be a lot because the topic of today goes quite deep. But what I do recommend you do is when you are chatting is switch it from all panelists to all panelists and attendees so that everybody else can see what you're having to say. Makes it a little bit more interactive here.
And we welcome all questions, right, Patrick?
And we want tons of questions, exactly.
Tons of questions.
So that we can get more deeper into answering some of the questions you might have had and give you more of what you thought you would get coming here in the first place. Nice, we're seeing a lot of people show up.
Hey, what's the topic today, Patrick? I forgot. No, just
you did, eh?
Yeah.
We decided to change the whole topic and say, how can you be as brief as Ali Bennen in communicating with the world? Because I recently done a count. I've known Ali for almost 10 years now, and I counted all of the words in his emails to me, and I didn't get through 100. I
believe in ROI per word, Patrick.
Exactly, that's what you do. I think it's an inspiration because I often am a little bit too wordy. And specifically when it comes to these webinars, I have to actually be very careful that I keep moving on and not get stuck on one of these topics, mostly because I'm so excited about it. So yeah, we're still seeing a lot of people join here. I'm excited to have you guys all. I see that Dirk Cleveland is here. Hi, my man. I hope you're doing well. It's been a while since you and I talked.
I'd like to note that Dirk is one of the most well-dressed and well-groomed professionals, even in this COVID environment.
I would absolutely agree.
He hasn't skipped a step or shave.
See, and I remember also, I also see that my good old buddy Eric Larson is here. And I was just thinking the other day, I was checking out TikTok, and I just remember that Eric, right? Didn't you once got upset about a few songs by Katy Perry? I just can only hope, don't go to TikTok. It's not going to be good for your health.
Eric's a big Katy Perry fan.
He is, right? There you go. All right. Anything else before we get going that we should tell you about? At the end, we're going to have some polls. And other than that, two funny good memories is what Eric is letting us know. Very, very true. He remembers. Yes. So I'd say, let's get started, Ali. I think we've got everybody there. Numbers are still growing, but slowly. Let's kick it off.
Okay, this is the second in a series. I'm Ali Bennen with Riviera Partners. I'm happy to be here with Patrick Ewers today, CEO and founder of the Mind Maven. I've known Patrick for 10 years, and he's been a friend and a coach for me in Riviera. And his company, Mind Maven, empowers execs to reach their fullest potential as leaders. He's worked with companies like Reddit, Sequoia Capital, Andreessen Horowitz, First Round Capital, and of course us. And today he's going to talk about building meaningful professional relationships.
All right.
I used to think a coffee and a drink and a few laughs was the way to get it done, but apparently that's not very effective, and especially in this day and age, he's going to give us some tips and tricks and a framework to do that. So take it away, Patrick.
All right, thank you, Ali. I always appreciate when you introduce me in this way. So hey, I'm really excited to be here for the second time, and the reason we're doing this is because you guys told us that's what you want, right? We asked in the last series what other topics would be interesting, so we got to work. And the topic today is how to have deeper, more meaningful interactions, specifically in the remote world. And before I get going, I want to tell you a little bit more about Mind Maven so you have a background of why I might be qualified to talk about this topic. Because Mind Maven is as Ali said, an executive coaching organization, and we focus on helping people reach their fullest potential, but we do that with a unique twist, and that is that we focus on relationships, on managing better relationships. And the reason we do that is very simple. It is because we believe that nobody you know has ever reached the top without help from others. And it's one of those things we just don't pay enough attention to. Because of that, we often walk a much harder path. Over the years, we've been doing this for a long time, as Ali said, our clients kept on coming back to us and telling us that we gave them superpowers. And so we decided to say, well, maybe that's what we do. That's what we call what we do. So we're in the business of unleashing superpowers. And we have 3 of those, right? One is leverage, the other is intent, and then there's fellowship. Leverage is around teaching how to better delegate to resources like your EA or your chief of staff. And through that process, be more integrated and free up 8 to 10 hours a week. And we've been able to prove that time and time again. Now with all that time, we move over to intent, and that is basically intentful time allocation goals, helping us become a lot more proactive and focus on those things that actually move the needle most, so that we can produce more results with the time we invest into whatever we're going after. And then most importantly, fellowship is the idea that no matter how grand your vision is, you will never get to it, you will never achieve it without the help of others. And so you need to get people to join your course, and not only join it, but follow you, preferably through hell and back. That's one part of it. You need to basically have a team, but it's not just all about the team. You also have to be able to get your network to want to cheer you on, to want to support you. And the best way they can support you is by giving you access to those types of opportunities that can basically be the difference between an okay outcome and a really, really great one. And so, long story short, all of what we do is about relationships. And so the first thing I want to do that we need to talk about if we want to learn about having more deeper, more meaningful interactions with people is you know, to have better relationships, is that we have to define relationships. And we at MindMaven do that in a very unique way, a very pragmatic way. And this is how we think about relationships. So relationships in my world are defined by simply the sum of all interactions you have with a person, period. Right? That's what makes a relationship real. If you don't interact with somebody that you don't know, you don't have a relationship. And the neat thing about that definition is that it actually becomes very pragmatic, because in terms of the interactions, you have almost 100% control over them. You can choose how and when and with whom you will interact to drive relationships. It's a very powerful tool. And it leads to a very simple golden rule that I teach almost every single client that we work with. And that is that you got to make sure that every interaction you ever stage is going to be perceived as meaningful, relevant, and valuable. So what we're going to do today is we're going to open up the lid and take a look at some of the more deeper processes that you need to be aware of to achieve exactly this golden rule. And the most powerful one is the first one I want to start with, and that is that you need to understand and need to be able to manage your mindset throughout all of the interactions that you are producing, because it's the best foundation you can deliver to you can deliver to have more meaningful interactions. And to understand how to do that, we need to basically take a step back and really take a look again at how we communicate, but not just communicate, but how we communicate congruently. It's about congruent communication. What that is, I will explain in a minute. But some of you might have remember from my last sessions, I already worked ourselves through it, but I wanted to repeat it, is basically how we communicate. This is work done by Albert Merberein. He's a professor of psychology at UCLA, or at least was. And he said basically there are 3 channels in which we communicate. Number 1 is the content, the words we choose when I'm talking to you. Number 2 is the tone of my voice. How am I talking to you? And of course, third is the visual cues that we're delivering when we're interacting with people. And there specifically, the facial expressions come to bear. And what is really interesting about Albert's work there is that he basically tried to understand how are these 3 channels distributed in terms of relative importance to each other. And what he found out might surprise you a little bit. And the biggest surprise that most people have when they see this is that the words you choose has only a weight of 7%. The tone is about 38% and the visual cues is 55%. And so what that means is that we like meeting in person. It's part because when we do, we are delivering a better experience and things go better. It's automatically more deeper, more meaningful. And of course, we're facing now that problem that we can't do the in-person experience as well as we can. So one of the things that we can do, however, is make sure that when we are communicating through all these three channels, for example, on Zoom and other places, that we are communicating congruently. And what that is, I want to explain to you right now. So, and I'll do that by going through a quick example. I'm going to read this, and I'm going to ask you guys to raise your hand. On the bottom, you can see a little raise your hand things, but only raise it if you actually agree with me. So what I'm asking you here, what I'm reading here is basically this statement. I want to see how you perceive it. I am very happy to see you, Ken. I like what you're saying, and I think we should put it right into place. So raise your hand if you think that is a positive statement, generally positive. Don't raise your hand if you think it's neutral or if it's negative. Right? I just want to see. I know that you guys can't see how many people are raising their hands, but for example, I can tell you right now we're about 60, 70% of the people believe that this is a positive statement. And I think the other ones are all asleep. So most of you guys think this is a positive statement. I would agree with you. But now watch really carefully. What happens if the person who's saying this is looking at you like this? Take your hand down if you think it's not as positive anymore. Right? Like stop raising your hand. Yeah, they're dropping like flies, those hands. And it's of course that way. And this is something that happens all the time. This is non-congruent communication. When you're saying one thing, but you're signaling something else with the nonverbal communication channels we have. And the thing that we are not aware of is how often we actually do it, because we do it way more often than we should. It's often driven by how stressed we are or what other impulses hit us right before we're interacting. And I would say right now, as a nation, as a society, we are experiencing high levels of stress because of these unique situations we're in. And so it is much likelier that you're actually communicating non-congruently than you think. And so what we have to ask ourselves is how to obtain congruent communication. Because if we look at this picture right now, don't you agree that not only is it now positive, but it feels actually wildly positive? You're actually excited. This person is really excited about the things, and I'm really on the right track, right? So how do we obtain congruent communication? How can we make sure that it happens? There's only one path to it, and that is having the right mindset, right? Because the problem is you don't have control over some of the nonverbal communication channels in the way we want to. The simple fact is you cannot fake feeling one thing and saying another. If you're not excited to see this person, you're saying, I'm excited to see you, you will communicate non-congruently, right? So what you need to do, and that's a simple tip I have for you, is always make sure that your mindset maps to the things you want to say or the things you want to express. Let me take you a notch deeper. Believe it or not, there is a few people that do the science of smiles. They're like spending all of their academic lives figuring out how smiles work. I think it's absolutely amazing, but there's some really powerful things we can learn from it. Number one, there is the Pan-American smile. The Pan-American smile is the smile that we smile most of the times. It's the one to dramatize. It's the one to entertain. It's that polite one. You know, it's not connected to real heartfelt expressions. It mostly involves the muscles around our mouth, but nothing else moves, right? It's that smile you get from the nice waiter working at a high-end restaurant who's smiling at you because it's his job. You guys know what I mean, right? So let me tell you about the other smile. It's called the Duchenne smile. The Duchenne smile is that smile that is actually linked to true feelings of happiness. Here, a few more things happen. You know, you squint your eyes and the crow feet are coming up. You raise your cheeks a little. You have a gleam in your eyes, and basically you're sending true signals of joy because you're actually feeling joy. So the Duchenne smile is a smile we are smiling when we're actually wanting to smile because something is happening that makes us be happy in some way or other, right? It is the real smile. And so again, this is work that I haven't done or work done by a guy called Dacher Keltner, psychologist at UC Berkeley. And the most important, profound thing that he found out is basically the problem with the fact that we have these two smiles is basically based on the fact that we don't have voluntary control over some of those muscles. You cannot make the Duchenne smile happen when you're not feeling it. And so that brings me back to this whole point of being in the mindset. You're going to probably ask, well, what's the whole point of this? Well, the whole point is that your mindset in interactions drives everything. It can be the difference between a completely forgettable experience and an exceptionally bonding great one, right? And so what is the best thing you can do to basically always be in the right mindset? Well, the best thing you can do is really commit to a mindfulness practice that trains your mind in such a way that you are actually becoming a lot more powerful in switching your mind and your state of mind to what you need at that moment in time. If you aren't there yet and you can't do that, or you don't have a mindfulness practice, what you can do is this. You can do the 60 seconds of mindfulness technique, and it goes like this. There's a checklist, and the checklist is based on the idea that before you start a meeting, 60 seconds before that, you take that minute to really get ready in your mind for that particular experience, for that meeting. And the first thing you do is you settle your mind and you refocus your mind. You check in with your mind. What is the state of my mind right now? How does it feel? Am I tired? Am I exhausted? Am I stressed? Am I distracted? And then basically what you then do is you basically say, okay, you accept that, and then you move your mind into whatever you need it to be for this next meeting, by calibrating it into something that is maybe more excited about the interaction coming up. You ask yourself questions like, why am I thrilled to have this meeting? What am I going to get out of this meeting? What can I make myself think that I think this is going to be a really good experience? And what you're doing is you are getting more excited in your mind about that meeting. And then when you say things like, it's great to meet you, you are actually delivering an experience that people will believe, right? And then the last thing you should do, just in general, is to cultivate your natural curiosity, because curiosity is the most powerful word in Mind Maven's coaching practice. And because that's true, I decided to take that up as our next topic that we're going to jump into. And that is how to leverage curiosity as a key way to deliver meaningful and more deeper experiences. Why is curiosity so important? Well, the answer is very, very simple. When you take genuine interest in others, you become genuinely interesting to others. It's just a fact of life. It is how our reciprocal nature of the human condition actually works. Some of you guys still remember Bill Clinton and his famous skill of being able to make everybody feel special. Well, all he did is he leveraged curiosity. And all we have to do is learn how to boost the natural curiosity that is already inside of us. Because I believe that the humans as part of the fundamental human condition are curious species. If we wouldn't be as curious as we are, we probably would have not survived on this planet. And if you need evidence, don't look any further than your own kids and their insatiable, constant need to learn and discover things, right? We are curious, and the only thing that happens is that it gets beaten out of us as adults for various reasons. We're not good at it anymore. We think that we already know what's coming because we've seen these patterns before. Partly it's because the society is making us be that way. So what do? We have to accept that we're not very good. We lost the muscle of really being good at being curious. And so what we have to do is we have to slowly build it up again. And you have to start using this technique that I call feeding your curiosity, because we have these moments probably 3-4 times a day where something can allow us to be curious, but it's so small that we don't recognize. We don't have enough awareness of it. So become aware of these little small sparks that make you feel like you just discovered something interesting. When you recognize that little spark, feed it and turn it into flame by asking yourself a question like, why does this intrigue me? Once the flame is a little bit bigger, you ask a follow-on question. It's like, hey, what makes me believe that? And you start having a conversation internally with you that is basically firing up that curiosity. So what is the most powerful tool that we've discovered in terms of really becoming curious? It is, again, utilizing something that you will find in mindfulness practice, and it's the practice of adopting a child's mind. Can I see a show of hands here? Raise your hands. Who has ever heard of the concept of the beginner's mind or the child's mind? Yeah, I see a few of you who have it. 13 people already. So you know what I'm talking about. You will also know that it's very powerful, yet sometimes challenging to adopt. But here's how we do this. The first thing that a beginner's mind actually, what is a beginner's mind? It is basically nothing else but seeing the world in a way as if you've never seen these things before, even if you've been through this 1,000 times. You need to step into the room, step into a situation and say, I've never been here. I've never done this before. This is how I would look at this if I've never been before in this situation. So once you do that, what you need to then do to achieve that is you really have to eliminate any kind of assumptions. I've been before, I know what he's thinking. Oh yeah, I know exactly what's going on. All of those things are really poison, toxic to being curious. So you got to get rid of them. And then because you don't know anything, you need to feel comfortable asking questions. And that's basically what we have to do. Now, the biggest thing about building this curious mind up, this child's mind up is basically having the awareness that you are coming across things you can actually be curious about. And that awareness is the biggest lever that you'll find. And so what I think you can do to adopt the child's mind is to basically, and to increase that awareness is to basically become aware of what trigger words are in your thoughts, basically, that really help you say, oh, there's something where I can be more curious. So whenever you think, that's interesting or intriguing, or even just different, right? When you have these words, as well as all of the classic question words, there's probably something there where you can be a lot more curious. The next thing you do is you take those words and you see how they pop up in thoughts, right? So become aware of what thoughts happen that allow you to become more curious. Whenever you think that's intriguing, why did she say that? Or you say, I wonder what makes them feel that way. Or, I never thought of it that way. You know, all of those thoughts are great triggers for you to say, you know what, I should become very curious. Let's fire up the beginner's mind and jump into asking a bunch of questions around this. And that is basically exactly the next thing you do. Once you have curiosity, the most powerful tool to feed that curiosity is, of course, asking questions. And so one of the most powerful ways to deliver a great experience interacting with others is to lead the conversations through questions. We call that skill questioneering. And this is one of those things we train our clients in our coaching programs. Now, you might ask, hey, why questions? Why should we do this? Well, there are two big reasons why. Number one, and Ali is, of course, a very, very skillful person in this, is if you ask questions, what you're going to do is you're going to shift the balance of talk time towards the person you're interacting with. Meaning it could be that you only spend 30% of the time talking while that person is talking 70%. And that is a good thing because we all like ourselves. We like hearing ourselves talk. When we get to talk a lot, we think we've had a great experience, right? I think all of you guys are hopefully nodding. I wish I could see you. But most people agree with me in that one, right? And it's how you can deliver a very profoundly connecting experience for those other people, while in the meantime, you are learning a lot about them because you are guiding the conversation with questions that you are genuinely interested in. And when you basically do that, you become genuinely interesting for them based on this principle that I led up earlier around the whole concept of curiosity. So how do we get good at asking questions? Obviously, there's a lot to learn and I don't have that much time. But one of the things is that you just have to start getting comfortable always using questions as the way you guide conversations. And here are some of them. And as I read them, I want to see if some of you guys can write into the quotes. So in the chat, please, what you notice about these questions, right? What are you working on these days? You know, what do you recuperate? What's unique about all of those questions? Does any of you guys know? Maybe you, Adele? Type it into the chat, please. I want to see if you guys get the answer. What's the most recent lessons you've learned? Okay, Ryan won the prize, guys. Very nice. Ryan says the questions are all open. Open-ended questions. That's right. Chris, not bad. The what, how personal. I love that. Michael Lee, you're on it. Love it. If you had if you had 3 extra hours each day, what would you spend them? They're all open-ended, and that is, of course, the tip number 1. It's very basic. I think all of you guys have heard about that already 3-4 times in your life. Ask open-ended questions. So let me move on to the next power tip around asking questions. That is, you need to fire the second dart. What's the second dart, you ask? Well, it's basically the simple principle that if you are committing to one question, you always should commit to ask another question. Don't ever ask a question singly. They always should come in pairs. And so that's why we call it the second dart. Why? Well, when you ask a question, just one question, you are basically leading somebody into a conversation, into a topic, and what you'll get back is typically only surface level answers. Why? Because either the person is resistant or the person needs to first get into it and doesn't know what the right answer is, but wants to perform and therefore gives you something a little bit more shallow. Now, when you then fire the second question, you allow that person to go a lot deeper into it, and it becomes a much more meaningful, deeper conversation. And that's why the second dart is so powerful. It digs deeper, and it also shows you some very powerful, genuine interest and curiosity for the other one. The best thing about the second dart, they're standard questions. For any topic, you will always be able to say, what makes you say that? Or why is that important to you? What's your favorite thing about that? And there's probably 20 more of those that you can come up with. And so because they're so easy, you will get into a habit, if you do this very often, where you always ask questions in pairs, and you can't help but firing the second dart. This is basically one of the best ways to do it. So let's practice that a little bit together. Let me give you a little bit of examples. Part of why the second darts are so powerful is because they also allow you to hunt for the hooks that allow you to fire the next second dart. So here's a very, very simple example of how you would do this, right? So for example, a good question is like, hey, having a conversation, you're saying, hey, it looks like you work really hard. I see you working all the time. What do you actually do to recuperate? Person answers, well, actually, I really like rock climbing. I wish I could do it right now, but I can't. But my favorite thing right now is to drive up to the weekend and hit some granite. Really? That's interesting. How did you get into that? That's the second dart, right? And so it is just as simple as that. And because it is so simple, I want to now show you how you can master the art of leading a conversation that only has a bandwidth, a time budget of 3 to 5 minutes, how you can go deep fast and deliver within the 3 to 5 minute window an experience that is actually profoundly connecting and meaningful without having to sit down and to spend 45 minutes or longer with that person. Here's a scenario. You're the CEO of a startup and you're talking to Alex, who's a growth marketer in your organization. All right. And so you run into that person, let's say at the Water Chat Zoom room or something like that. And you start off with a comment with something like, hey, this is not an evaluation of your work, but I'm just curious, hey, what are you working on these days? What you notice with this question is that it's a very shallow question. It's a question you can almost always ask. Everybody can ask it to anyone at any point in time, I would argue, right? So the answer that you're getting now from Alex is like, well, right now I'm focused on reassessing our SEO setup. SEO stands for search engine optimization, for those that don't know it. The new algorithms changed pretty dramatically. So we have a lot of work ahead of us, but I'm really looking forward to that challenge. You can see a little guarded answer, you know, you're the CEO, I get it. Interesting is what you then say. It sounds like you're pretty passionate about this type of work. Is that right? Second dart, firing. Pretty close to the first one still. So the answer you get is, yeah, I think SEO work has always been really fun for me. And then, of course, the next conversation is, oh, what do you think caused you to be so passionate about that? And then the answer that you will get, of course, is now starting, because it's a deeper question. Passion is already going into a personal thing, but the segue still feels pretty natural. You get an answer like this, like, you know what, honestly, I like proving people wrong. There's a lot of talk right now that SEO is dead or dying. I really don't believe that. I think it's still one of the best ways to drive traffic, and I really enjoy trying to solve that puzzle. The fact that you've always got to try new things and see what works, right? So this is now a really personal answer, a real one, not a staged one, and you might react in a way as actually, you will react to that in a way that actually touches you in some personal way, because you might actually find out that you feel very similar to that. So you'd say, you know, I love that, you know, and then it really feels like a natural, real conversation. Where did that come from? Your desire to solve puzzles, that really resonates with me too, which hints on something that says there might be something that the two of them have in common. Well, the answer that you're going to get there is, you know, this is of course made up, but it could be very real. And then so Alex will say, you know, when I was young, my father and I used to spend almost every evening working on a puzzle. At first, I just watched. It was just my dad's thing, you know, and he was so much better than me. But as I got older and older, I got faster and better. And honestly, I got a little addicted to these these puzzles. And then you say, oh yeah, what makes you say that? And then, well, one time I remember, that my parents caught me past bedtime, hidden under my bed with a flashlight doing a puzzle. I guess that's why I'm still loving working on challenging things these days and figuring out puzzles and so on and so forth. And so this is basically where the conversation then can end by you as the CEO connecting with Alex in this way, where you say, I can definitely see that in the way you talk about that. My experience is actually different, but not that much. When I was a kid, my dad asked me to clean out the shed. Instead of just getting to work, I drew a picture of the shed and took inventory of everything inside. And then I used to decide in advance where everything would go. It took a lot longer, but you should have seen the shed afterwards. It looked great. So the point you're seeing is that Alex and you, in this case, basically the CEO, have found a common ground thing within 3-5 minutes that it took me to walk you guys through it. It probably would have gone even faster because I had to do a lot of explanations. So it's very easy using questions to go deep relatively fast. So here are some key takeaways that I want you guys to have from this example. Number one, it started off with a very shallow question. What are you working on these days? Then, we took it deeper, step by step by step. And then at the end, it really ended up with a very powerful thing, and that is establishing common ground. And whenever we establish common ground, something very powerful happens in the sense that we feel a lot more connected. And if you are, for example, a CEO of a startup, it's one of the best things you can do with any team member that you have, especially those that are more skip level, because it lets these people want to feel like they have a real relationship with you. And of course, if they do, they are interested in helping all of us be more successful, and they probably will stick around longer. It's a great way, for example, to lower attrition rate, especially in a competitive talent market that we're all facing. All right. And so common ground is the key word. And so my fourth tip is exactly this, is jumping into how we can utilize the power of common ground. And to do so, we need to understand, why is it so powerful? And to do that, I need to take all of you guys on a time journey. And I hope you're willing to follow me there 100,000 years back, when we all were living in cages, because back then survival meant one thing. We needed to identify our tribe. We need to know who belongs to our tribe and who isn't. What we needed to do is we needed to collaborate with our tribe. We would have not survived as a species if we could have not hunted together. Right? And then, of course, tribal life today is still very violent, and it was certainly back then. You need to be able to work together to defend the tribe. And basically, those that succeeded at doing these three things really well ended up surviving, and those that didn't died. And so the matter of the fact is that the genes we all have in us today are based on those that survived, if you believe in evolution. And so, like it or not, this concept of tribal thinking is still a fundamental part of the human condition. It still exists in tribal lifestyles, like in Papua New Guinea. And it's unfortunately touching us in very uncomfortable ways in the world. It's, like the divides that we see across the world in terms of culture, religion, and so on and so forth is causing a lot of pain. But having said that, something did have changed, and that is that basically modern tribes are starting to look very, very different. And the way they look different is that we belong not to just one tribe anymore, but to hundreds and more. And so the tribes we now belong to are that we all enjoy certain movies, for example, or if you are like me and you enjoy gadgets, then you and I would be in the same tribe for that. Trail runners, or I know that Ali is a huge fan of biking. Wine aficionados, I'm sure that quite a few of you guys here are like that. So the point that I'm making is, like, we're still tribal species. And so one of the best things you can do is try to join as many tribes as you can with the people you're meeting with, because that will make them think that you are one of them. And one of them is going to deliver a very meaningful connection. It will have a very profound bonding experience. And it makes things easier because you're going to get a lot more trust. And so this is what happens. When you find common ground, you feel connected more with people because they will think they're one of them, but it also goes the other way. You will think this person is one of yours. And what happens in our brain is that you start thinking, I am like you, right? And what is so powerful about this statement is that if you look at how our brain is operating or processing this statement, it comes to a very simple equation that says that when you say, I am like you, it means nothing else but I like you. And that's why common ground as a general wisdom is so powerful, because when you get people to find common ground, they actually are saying, I am like you. And that means nothing else but I like you. And likability is one of the most under-leveraged concepts in business. It can do so many things. So how do we get to find common ground? How do you do this? Well, there are two types of common ground that you really can think about. It's a super simplistic model, but for this presentation, I figured this will suffice. You have those low likelihood common grounds that deliver really strong bonding connection, right? These are very unique, very specific interests. For example, I have done a 10-day silent meditation retreat in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand already 3 times. It's a very profound, powerful experience. If I come across somebody else who has done that, that is bonding like nothing else. My first son was born at home. You know, those types of things are exceptionally bonding when you find them. So it's great to find them, but of course it's kind of hard because these topics don't come up. So you have to develop quite a bit of skill to get to that, but it's doable. Much easier is the second type of common ground. I call it the high likelihood, weaker connection type of thing. It's the common, more broad interests. For example, 60% of the people you know probably like hiking. If you're in the tech industry, a lot of people like going on their road bikes around the Bay Area. Board games, college sports, you name it. So the habit you need to develop is use your questionnaire that I gave you earlier to try to find as many, to guide the conversation in directions that allow you to find common ground, because it is just so powerful. Now, you can't always find common ground. And what do you do if you can't? Well, what you do is you focus on the next best thing. And there is tons to discover, right? So if you can't find common ground, find something that's intriguing. You know, it might not be something you're doing, but you find it very intriguing what that person is. And then you lean into that. If you can't find something intriguing, find something that's at least interesting. You know, like, all right, that's interesting. That lean in, use my questionnaire for that. And then if you can't find something interesting, find something that's different and make that interesting to you, you know, because there's at least the opportunity for you to learn. The point I'm making is if you can't find common ground, there are tons of other ways to engage just as well. All right, I wanted to remind you guys, I want to get questions from you. If you have questions for any of these topics, please throw them into the chat because it allows us to address them at the end of this presentation. So let's get to point number 5. We're nearing the end, but we're not quite there yet. And we're getting deeper and deeper into things. And this is basically one of the best, most powerful tools in our coffer. And that is basically leverage empathy by creating or gaining what I call empathetic eminence, the skill to react exceptionally empathetic to people who are in need of it. And to understand how to do that, we need to understand what empathy is. Empathy is the ability, in my world, in my definition, to see the world through the eyes of others. And then, and this is important, be able to reflect it back to them. And the most powerful thing about empathy is that if you believe some people are really empathetic and I'm not, you're making yourself a mistake by having a fixed mindset, because empathy is a skill, and that means it can be learned. And so we have a bunch of things that we do teach people when we teach empathy. Today, I'm going to give you the 2 most powerful tips. And the most powerful tip here clearly is to start listening first, to become a very powerful listener by only speaking after you have carefully heard. And I'm using the word heard instead of listening to give it even more emphasis. So for sure, put all the devices away. And when you're listening to somebody, make good eye contact, like I'm trying to do with you guys right now. And then basically, for sure, make sure that you give them the time to finish. Do not try to interrupt them. And then the most important thing that we are probably all at fault at is try not to figure out what you're going to say to respond to what you're hearing while you're listening. Literally give yourself the permission to not think about that until you get to the time where you're about to talk. Why? Because if you are starting to think, you are instantly starting to communicate non-congruently or listen non-congruently because you're busy thinking something. You will show signs on your face of being slightly distracted. Some people might not recognize, but a lot of people will actually be in tuned enough to notice this, and they will feel, it will lessen the experience of you truly listening. All right, last but not least, if you're not quite sure, summarize what you've heard. That's, by the way, a great way to buy yourself time to come up with the response that you want. Have I write this correctly? Is this what you said? And then you repeat it. And then, of course, go and ask more questions. Fire the second dart, if you will, but make sure that these questions are non-judgmental. So that's tip number one. Tip number two is go and then take what you've heard and express your perspective. And what I mean with that is really share how you would feel if you would be going through the same situation that was just described to you. This is super, super powerful if you do it well. And the way you do it is basically that you put yourself into the shoes of that person and you imagine as you're listening, as you hear that, what would you feel? You imagine experiencing the same thing as if you were that person. Then you let all the emotions that come from that experience arise. And this is something where I can only stress, give yourself time for that. Don't try to do that while you're listening, do it afterwards. I regularly, when somebody says something profound and very vulnerable to me, I sit there and I let the pause go on for 5-10 seconds while I'm collecting my thoughts, while I'm letting my emotion rise up and really seek it in. And then basically all you do, and this is the easiest part, is you describe the emotions you experience right then and there, you voice them and describe them. And most likely what you end up doing is you're delivering an experience where that person felt not only heard, but also very much understood. And again, from a tribal perspective, puts you into the micro tribe of, oh, that person, can go through the same experience I'm going through. And there's probably nothing more bonding and more deeper in terms of an experience and a meaningful interaction than that type of gift. All right, so let me show you an example. And I love this example because it actually started with a very banal, very simple email that was sent to 1,000 people, right? This is a mass email I received from a friend of mine called John Morrison. He was shutting down his company, and then he wrote basically that he had to make the tough decision to do so. And it was basically just I'm going to close your account. And so I decided to respond to it, and I tried to be as empathetic as I could. And this is the response that I shipped. Hey, John, I got the notice that you guys are shutting down Rappel. What a bummer. But I'm sure you had a bit of weight lifted from your shoulders the moment you made that decision. Let me know what's up for your next adventure. I assume I'm going to take a break, but don't hesitate to let me know if there's anything I can help. Short, but probably very powerful. So let's take a look by dissecting this in terms of empathy. The first sentence that you can see is basically that I'm describing how I would feel if I were to go through that same situation. And yes, I thought about it. And yes, I was like, oh God, I can finally breathe away. I don't have to keep this thing alive. It's done. I can move on, right? Then, of course, I can move on is the next thing. And so I move the subject of the conversation away from the bad, the negative of having to shut down and have to accept failure, to like, look, that means your future can be just very bright. But then I wanted to be again empathetic by saying, but the first thing that I would do is I would probably want to take a break and just like take a step back before jumping into the next thing, which is a very smart thing to do. And then basically, obviously, the help as a general thing that we would do. And this is the email I got back. The email I got back was basically saying, hey, Patrick, yes, bummer. Yes, weight lifted. Going to take a bit of a break. You're 3 for 3, right? So it was like an absolute home run on something that basically he didn't expect because he sent me a mass email. And that's basically some of those things that really can show you the power of empathy and why it is worthwhile building up this type of empathy. And when I talk about building it up, this is really important that you guys start believing me. It is like working out your muscles around empathy. And so the more you can train having empathetic thoughts, the more natural it becomes, to the point that you don't even notice you are becoming a more empathetic individual. And that's how you can actually really control change in your life that you want. And so one of the tips I have for you is create a triggered habit. A triggered habit is a habit that you do every time you you notice something. And the habit can be whenever you hear or read a story with some sort of emotional highs and lows, I think all you have to do is just go through Medium and see what people are writing about. You'll find enough of them. And then basically not just read it and be entertained by it, but basically ask yourself the question, how would I feel in this situation? And then speak it out loud to yourself. What would I do in this? How and what would I feel in this situation, basically? All right. And if you do that regularly, eventually you're just going to become so natural at this that you will deliver very profound and powerful experiences through leveraging empathy. All right, guys, we're almost at the end here. I'm going to give you some more really pragmatic tips. This is part of things that we train or coach people around. It's called Trigger Touch, on how you can leverage your network to generate more referrals, more opportunities to be wildly more successful. There's a very good chance that Ali and I might actually do a topic of that in the future. Can you give me a show of hands if that actually be interesting to you? It's basically how you can just be more in touch with your network, how to stay top of mind with your network to generate things that can actually have a profound impact on your happiness, but also on the success of your life. So I'm seeing that over 50% of you guys said that would be of interest. That's nice to hear. So let's talk about Trigger Touch though, because it's the most pragmatic, hands-on thing that you can do. Trigger Touch is nothing else but the idea of using triggers that we are getting to reach out to people. And we're getting tons of triggers. We're getting triggers by reading our favorite news outlets, right? Where we might see where somebody's launched a product or has laid off a bunch of people. TechCrunch is really great for it right now. LinkedIn and Twitter are great places, where you maybe notice that a mentor of yours, an unofficial mentors just brought on a new VP. That's a great example. That somebody just got fired of a company that they co-founded. That's a pretty dramatic thing. But we see those things through various channels. We see them in news, we see them in meetings, and they can be good or bad. It doesn't matter. But what we want to do is utilize those to deliver a really meaningful, relevant, and valuable interaction. And here's how to do that, right? I got 2-3 tips for you guys, and then we can really open up for questions. And I hope that we have a few. I'm glad that Adele already asked them, but I hope you have a few more. The first and most thing is the joy. Use those Trigger Touches to basically demonstrate a joy for the success of others. It's one of the most endearing, powerful traits that we can develop as humans. And it's also one of those that we have a hardest time doing, because every time somebody else is successful, there's something in us that rises, right? Yeah, it rises up, that has a bit of a dirty feeling to it, the enviness, like, oh my God, And so if you are one of those people who can truly be excited about somebody else being successful, you're going to be a very pleasant person that people want to support and want to see succeed. And so here's the example I have for you. It's this story of a client who basically, after the Super Bowl, Atlanta had lost. He was the CEO of Tile, so they gave away 55,000 trackers so that Atlanta didn't have to lose anything again this year. It was a super smart marketing move. I thought that was awesome. It ended up being actually really successful. And so what do we do as a Trigger Touch reaction, as an interaction? Is we write them an email, we point to the link, and then we say, hey, how awesome is that? This is absolutely brilliant. I've got to say, I thought that was very courageous and creative and courageous. And so I talk about how I felt about this thing, and it's very honest and genuine. And it's a great way to basically make somebody else feel good about something they did well. What I do want you to see, and this is easy to do because there's a lot of success that people put onto social media. They only put the good things out there, right? That's why we have sometimes social media envy. One of the things you really want to make sure is that you're thoughtful in your response. Do not fire something meaningless out that is that is akin to what I call the congrats trap, right? If I have to see another retweet or a reply on Twitter that says congrats, I am going to throw up. It's horrible, right? Don't write congrats for fun. I love your quote. Great choice on your hires. It's just bullshit. You might as well save your breath. Don't send empty calories. The way you become more thoughtful is by being specific. Why are you excited about this? Why was, what did it make you feel? try to be as specific as you can. And because if you are more specific, you are making the comment a lot more genuine and therefore more rememberable, therefore more deeper, more meaningful. All right. Now I got one more tip for you. No, two more tips for you. Genuine. The next thing you can utilize the trigger touch for is to do just genuine cheerleading. That's different. It's not necessarily a big event where somebody has been very successful, but somebody is engaging in something that you like and you want to clap and move them on. Here, this is David Cohen. He's the CEO, or used to be the CEO of Techstars, and he was very heavily involved in this whole net neutrality thing that we had going on. And I was a big supporter of that. And so I wrote him an email saying I stumbled upon you, doing this. And I just wanted to let you know that I love and appreciate that you're using your platform to fight for net neutrality. Again, very specific, connecting my feelings to what he's doing, and therefore probably delivering a more connecting experience. And then, because I'm such a fan of empathy, you probably already got that. I have one more example. And this is an example from somebody that I actually really cared about. It's a negative situation that happened. I don't know if some of you remember the whole implosion of Rothenberg Ventures a few years back. But a person that I knew, Tom Leap, kind of got caught up in it. And I felt very bad for him. And so I sent him the following message. And the message was, it's a longer one. I'm going to spare you reading it. You can also see it in the slides we send out afterwards. But the key point that I made is like, look, I know that this whole implosion of Rothenberg is really, really, really bad, but I want to make sure that you know that this has absolutely no impact on what I think about you, because I think you are just an awesome human being. Every interaction I had with you was one that made me think you're somebody that should be watched because you're clearly going places. And so nothing has changed, because a lot of people shy away from people that are hurt because of these things. And so one thing that we should do is step in and show it. And I'm certainly right, because Tony now is running his own venture fund and is focusing on helping us save this planet of ours. So I think that's really good. So to wrap it up and open up for question, I'm going to ask you guys, I'm going to repeat real quick what I did and why I did it for you. Right. Number one, we really talked about the foundation. You need to have the right mindset. If you don't have the right mindset, everything else is going to be harder to achieve. Curiosity is the most powerful word in all of relationship management. And the way you make it come alive is through the art of questioneering. Common ground lets us get deeper and be more connected. And you can get very, very personal by learning the skill of empathetic eminence. And then finally, you can use all of these tools to basically make it something you do very regularly by using triggers in your life to reach out to people you otherwise would have not reached out that day. And so that's what I had for you guys. I hope you really enjoyed it. I want to leave you with one last thing, and that is sort of a request, if you will. We do this freely. We do this to help our ecosystem right now. A lot of people are suffering. And it's the best way that we thought we can contribute. And if you come across people that would enjoy learning more about what we do, the way you can find them is by any of these quotes that you see there. If you have conversations where these kind of thoughts come up, you should definitely make them aware of us. Let them check out our blog, follow me on Twitter, or just send me an introduction. Reach out to me. I'm always available at patrick@mindmaven.com. And Ali, with that, I think you should come back online, and maybe we have a few questions that we can go through here.
All right, so I'd like to throw it out to the crew out there. Any questions that we can answer for you guys?
Yes, so they are in the panel. So I think I see one from Adele. Right? She says, do you have any advice on how to overcome the feeling that you have to prove yourself? It leads to talking more than drawing somebody out. Also, it leads to sounding like you know it all. Adele, that's a fantastic question. Yeah. The advice that I have for you is find comfort in the pause. Just practice it with friends, with people where you have nothing to prove. Have a conversation with them, and then just pause and literally let the pause go on for 5-10 seconds, right? Hold back, hold your thoughts, hold your words, and you'll be surprised what will happen is that the other person will ask. The other tip that I have for you is try what I said about questioneering. If you focus on just asking questions, you are going to deliver a experience where you don't feel like you have to talk so much. You don't have to prove yourself. And very often through the conversation, you will still deliver that. You will deliver an experience that people think you are proving yourself, right? Because very often when you ask those questions, you are reacting in a way that shows your intelligence or shows your thoughtfulness towards them in that way. So that, I have that too, right? I have this feeling of wanting to go and run into talking a lot just to prove myself and basically find your own physical thing of pulling the handbrake a little and just like say less. Oh, another thing you can do is there's something that happens in our brain when we feel like we're wanting to talk a lot. So you get to a point where you and you have this like moment of panic that you probably feel, and then that pushes you forward to say and da 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 da, and you go on. Become very aware of that moment when that moment of panic, that moment of feeling, whatever it is. Let me know, Adele, if you understand what I'm meaning with a quick yes or something, because when you notice that, when you get that awareness, basically just say stop. Literally just stop. It is absolutely okay. Stop. Right. And then basically you stop and you will see that basically the other person will pick up the conversation, will respond, because they will actually also have that feeling, no matter who they are, that they want to prove themselves or want to contribute to. And that's so important, because when you talk too much, you will actually not deliver the best experience to those people. So,
hey Patrick, we got another question in here. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Steve's got a question in here talking about speaking fast versus speaking slow. You have any thoughts on that and the difference, how that works engaging people?
Look, there's this thing, I could have gone a lot more deeper into it, but some of you guys have heard about this, the mirror neurons, right? These are neurons that, and this is why what I taught today is so powerful. For example, when you go through things in your mind, like the whole empathy training muscle thingy, what you're doing is the mirror neurons are basically there to be very empathetic for us, but it also is the thing that basically makes it almost no difference if you're thinking something or really experiencing it. There's no difference in our brain. So that's why high-end athletes are actually really, also training when they're doing it in their mind, because we can do it. That's one of those things work. So the mirror neurons allow us to do one thing, and that is to basically do mimicking when we mimicking the other person's style. So this is a classic that anybody who's been in sales training before has gone through it. It's basically you mimic how the other person talks. And that's basically where I would say you go. If the other person is talking very slow and calm, or for example, you're talking about a very vulnerable, deep topic, it makes a lot of sense to also talk calm and quiet and slower and you take your time, you show that that has its gravity. If the other person is running fast and you feel like you're on a marathon, you're just like on it, then you match that, right? At the end of the day, I wouldn't think too much about anything else. Be yourself, right? You will always be, because of this congruent communication thing, the most authentic if you are trying to be yourself, because it is the easiest for you, and it is not taking away mental resources that you need to come up with a facade of who you're trying to be if it's not you. So if you're a fast talker, talk fast, right? If you're a slow talker, talk slow, and find comfort in doing that, because that's who you are, and that's how you will always deliver the best experience. Is that Steve, can you write back if you're still here? If this kind of answered your question with a quick yes or something. All right. Anything else, Ali? We have, I think, 3 more minutes here.
This is from Eric Larson.
Eric, what's going on?
He had a question on the 60-second mindset slide. He said you didn't talk about using chemicals to adjust your mindset. How do you feel about using chemicals?
Ali, is that really Eric, or did you make that one up?
Really, Eric.
Really, Eric. All right, Eric. Look, whatever floats your boat. I'm a very liberal Bay Area kind of dude, and I've seen stuff that isn't it. But to be honest, if you really want my honest answer, is um, go deep into mindfulness practice. You know, I've told you guys that I've done 10-day silent meditation retreats with the real Buddhist monks on the Buddhist tradition where this whole mindfulness practice is coming from. And it's exceptionally powerful in terms of what it can give us for our regular, normal day-to-day life. And it will always, in my view, outperform any kind of chemicals that people can come up with, mostly because it doesn't work for sports, right? In sports, it doesn't work. And at the end of the day, mindfulness practice is nothing else but a workout for the mind. It's something that's going to become just as normal, I believe, in 10 years or 15 years as going to the gym. You got to be able to do that. And taking drugs to do performance and enhancing things will probably not work in the long run for most people. But hey, go experiment if it works for you, right?
Well, he's a Katy Perry fan, so you know, who knows.
Look at that. All right. Adele had one last question, and then we can hop everybody off. You said, do you have any specific? Wait a minute. Any specific advice for the immediate future when your first contact cannot be in person? Any tricks to building relationships on Zoom, etc.? Yes, I have. Adele, I don't know if you participate in the first session. If you haven't, definitely check out the recording or get on our mailing list, because we do them regularly again. But I talk very specific about how to stay connected with people for a whole 45 minutes with lots of really powerful tricks. It's not necessarily the first contact, but a lot of the things that are there are helpful.
Hey, Craig Music had a question there. You should
Yeah.
ask that or answer that.
Yeah, let's do it.
He says, can you go over examples of finding common ground when you're unable to easily find common interests or experiences? When that gets
when it gets, look, the whole point that I try to bring across, Craig, is you can't force it. You know, like all you can do is you can increase the likelihood of it happening. That's the idea that I have behind it, right? Like, you know, that you have these meetings sometimes where you have like this amazing common ground that you kind of discovered by accident, and when it happens, it's one of the best meetings you have that week, right? Can you nod right now, or send me a yes that you agree with me? And so all I'm saying is, like, we want those things to happen more often, right? You want that to happen more often by trying to do a little prospecting, if you will. But if you feel resistance from the person, don't push it onto them. It'll get very, very fast awkward and unnatural. And then just make it a habit of always looking for those things. Another thing that is really helpful is becoming a lot more aware of what you have to offer in terms of common ground, right? This is part of what we do in a concept we call value payload management. We actually create a common ground landscape of you that shows everything you have, and it's actually kind of nice to realize how much you actually have to offer that allows you to find common ground. And then the last thing, Craig, that I would say is just stick to the easy things for now, and then find common ground around hiking. Who doesn't like hiking? For example, if I were to have a conversation with you and I find hiking interesting and you find hiking interesting, I would ask you, where do you go hiking? What do you do? It will be a great experience. I will then tell you, hey, have you ever done the Alameda Falls hike? It's one of only 2 waterfalls that drop into the Pacific Ocean on the continental West Coast. And it's only slightly north of Bolinas, so an hour away, stuff like this. That's what I would do. Okay, I think we're out of time here. Thanks, Greg, for the positive feedback here. I had a good time. If you guys are interested, if you belong to groups of other organizations, or you are part of an organization where you think the team would enjoy similar content, we're happy to help out. Reach out to me at patrick@mindmaven.com. And other than that, Ali and I'll get together and see what we'll throw back at you next. All right. Thank you.